Now.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Juan Gonzalez. We turn now to a deeply polarizing figure who's been dominating the airwaves. He's the darling of conservatives and right-wing activists, but to liberals and progressives, he's a much reviled object of derision, a demagogue prone to maudlin dramatics. Yes, I'm talking about the right-wing TV and radio host, Glenn Beck. He's also a best-selling author, and his latest venture is a slickly designed blog called The Blaze. Last weekend, Glenn Beck organized a much-publicized Restoring Honor rally in front of the Lincoln Memorial in the nation's capital. It was held on the 47th anniversary of the historic March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. Here's an excerpt of Glenn Beck's speech at the rally.
Somewhere in this crowd, I know it, I have been looking for the next George Washington. I can't find him. I know he is in this crowd. He may be 8 years old, but this is the moment. This is the moment that he dedicates his life, that he sees giants around him. And 25 years from now, he will come not to this stair, but to those stairs, and he can proclaim, I have a new dream. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. And it only matters when you tell the truth and you know it's going to hurt you. You know that it's not going to help your side. Tell the truth. America is crying out for the truth. Tell the truth in your own life and then expect it from others.
That was Fox News broadcaster Glenn Beck. His fans reportedly number in the millions, and Saturday's rally drew nearly 100,000 supporters. How did a former top 40 radio DJ, who describes himself as a recovering alcoholic who struggled with drug abuse, become a nationwide cultural phenomenon? Well, investigative journalist Alexander Zaitchik tells this story in his book, Common Nonsense, Glenn Beck and the Triumph of Ignorance. He joins me here in our studio. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Good to be here.
You were at the rally.
I was there.
What was it like?
Well, it certainly didn't resemble the rally that I read about in the press. It sort of got a pass. People thought this was a softer, kinder, squishier Glenn Beck, a non-political Glenn Beck, but it was a deeply political event, I think. He's calling for, basically a return to biblical principles, turning back to God, which is as political as you can get. This is a secular republic, the last time I checked, and Beck's conception of turning back to God and bringing the Constitution back to its original biblical kind of base is, you have to see it in light of Beck's Mormon reading of American history, in which God literally wrote the Constitution and intended its development to stop at around the 10th Amendment. So when Beck talks about turning back to God, what he's really talking about is a drastic diminution of the government as modern Americans know it.
Tell us a little bit about his history. How did he get to where he is now to become this sort of icon of right-wing conservatives?
It's an incredibly unlikely story that this guy would end up addressing this many people at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial. Just 10 years ago, he was still a struggling top 40 DJ, basically a failure. Had bottomed out after about 20 years as a morning zoo top 40 guy traveling the country, getting fired from markets pretty quickly for making a lot of enemies and being famous for his mean streak, which is still in abundant evidence. He was really kind of a divisive figure even then, when he was in this clownish, infantile world of top 40 radio. And he got a talk show largely through being at the right place at the right time. He was working for Clear Channel when it was still a small company, and then when it began to take advantage of deregulation, he used his connections to land a job in Tampa, where he was about to get fired until the recount drama of 2000 put a lot of focus on Florida, where he was working. So he was able to parlay that into ratings, and then he was syndicated, and then 9/11 happened, and he sort of turned overnight into this hard-charging, fire-breathing super patriot that we know today.
And some of the you mentioned, say, his propensity to get in trouble for what he says. Some of the statements that you've been chronicling over the years now of his. Right.
Well, his more recent controversies are pretty well known, but even going back to the 80s and 90s, he was known for a racist, sexist shtick. He famously or infamously called up the wife of a competing DJ in Phoenix in the mid-'80s and mocked her for having a miscarriage live on the air. He made fun of a guy named Malik Jones in New Haven, who was an unarmed black man shot by a white police officer, and it was quite a big police brutality case at the time. He went on air that week making fun of Jones, talking about how he used to smoke crack with his grandmother, stuff like this. So, you know, this Glenn Beck that is so divisive today has been there the whole time. And the idea that he had this, you know, transformative experience when he became a Mormon and became a good guy and is this sort of moral beacon is just ludicrous.
Well, Glenn Beck was on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace discussing his Restoring Honor rally and how he plans to, quote, reclaim the civil rights movement. When Wallace asked him about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of economic justice, Beck said that's a part of the civil rights leader's message that he didn't agree with.
Reclaim the civil rights, meaning people of faith that look at equal justice and look at every man the same. That's who needs to reclaim it. Not the politicians, not the parties, not white people or black people.
But Glenn,
people of faith.
But Glenn, the civil rights movement always had an agenda beyond just equality, beyond just, quote, justice. The full name of the march 47 years ago was the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. One of the speakers at the event was a labor leader, A. Philip Randolph, who talked about the injustice of people who live in poverty. John Lewis, then a student, now a congressman, said this at the event: "We need a bill that will ensure the equality of a maid who earns $5 a week in the home of a family whose total income is $100,000 a year." The civil rights movement was always about an economic